guys, so welcome back to the Rust Room. Today I am working on the TVR in my garage because, long story short, I'm converting it to coil pack because the TFI, although I got it working, it just wasn't reliable. It was, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it was to do with the triggering and sending to the ECU, but then I don't think it knew it was where it was, and then it was sending the wrong advanced signals back to the coil, so it would basically randomly just get lost and the timing would just go nuts, like just all over the shop, and then it would obviously misfire and run really badly and then cut out. Eventually you'd start it and then it would find itself again and then it would be okay, but it was just a nightmare because you'd be driving it and then it would just cut out and then it just wouldn't run properly, and you could be anywhere. So luckily every time it's done it, it sorted itself out after you left it for a while. But I feel like it was getting worse. I was trying to change the offset angles and stuff, and it just made it worse to the point where I'd reverse it out of the garage and then it would just start misfiring. The guy that did the loom for me, Sean, who's been a massive help for me throughout this whole build, to be fair, so he advised me to go this coil pack route. So it basically uses two of these like 4-prong coil packs. Obviously I only need 6 of them, not 8, so I use 1.5 basically. And I've also got a trigger wheel, which I'll show you now. So I've got a trigger wheel made that goes in there on this bracket, so that will just make sure everything, it'll know exactly where it is now. So the old one was in the distributor, so the distributor will be completely redundant. I'll just take this cap off a sec. So that is the trigger wheel, and there's like a sensor there, you see, that picks it up. But it was something to do with either it wasn't picking it up right, although I did get quite a good RPM signal most of the time, or it was to do with the ignition module there, the TFI unit, or it was to do with the ECU sending back the advance and it didn't understand it because it goes back through it. One of those things. Basically, I just had enough of it. I spent hours like messing around with it, trying to get it to run right, and also the whole like breaking down and misfiring situation was just getting annoying. So running this, I should have perfectly reliable ignition. So I have sent the ECU back to Phil at X3FI, who did it initially, and he has converted it to run on the trigger system, and he's added 3 spark outputs for me for the coils. So I have to wire them in to the connector. It's actually those 3 there that haven't been used. And then I also had to lengthen the pick up the trigger wire, and then now I'm just adding some more powers for the 2 coils. Obviously I had 1 before, and this is the relays that I had anyway, and Sean says they'll be all right for the new coils. So I've just got to run 3 wires to about here where the coils are going to go, which is actually, I'm going to mount them there and there. So I asked him if there was any issues with the heat, so I'm just going to come off those bolts there and just put them there. So there will be an air gap underneath. But yeah, I asked him about the heat and he said it's not ideal, but then the only other option would be to put them like over here somewhere, and then you'd have really long leads, and he said that's worse. So kind of makes sense to me. Most new cars have coil packs on the plugs, don't they? So, and they're obviously in the engine. So yeah, I'm going to try that, mount them, and then hopefully it will work again. I don't know, wish me luck. Also, I can't remember if I'd put this on, but I got a new radiator as well after the issue, which I know what it was now. The fans just didn't kick in. There's something in the fan wiring which would just randomly make it stop. It might even just be a loose connection or something, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so I just rewired it on its own separate relay, and it's just on a switch for now. So and I also got a new windscreen, as this one was, where's it there? This one was Fubar. And for reference, if you've got a TVR S series and you're struggling to get a windscreen, use a late Capri one. I mean, I've got it in there, and the only difference is it doesn't have the black band around the edge to cover the sealant, so I need to sort something out with that eventually, but I just found it locally and just stuck it in there so it's no longer cracked. And that's it really. So do some wiring, mount the coils properly. I've made the brackets for them, I just need a couple of nuts and bolts, and then retune. So that's the 3 there soldered in. I have stress tested them as much as possible and they seem to be alright. So let's go for that. So that's the wiring put back in now. So it's just back how it was basically, although I've got the extra bit down to the sensor there. And this is for the coils, which are going to sit here. And obviously the distributor has nothing now. So I need to get some plugs for the coils and get some bolts to just mount them on the top. I need to mess around with the spacing for the water pump pulley because I've added the trigger wheel inside, so basically the pulley at the bottom splits in half. Those 4 bolts split it in half, and then I sandwiched the trigger wheel in there. Hopefully it's going to work because it's obviously slightly smaller than that rear pulley. I just took this one off and measured it off it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's bigger, great, but then I didn't realise it was smaller than that. But I've got it pointing on it, so hopefully it'll be alright. And yeah, I need to space the alternator out. It's all like 5mm, so I should be able to gain that there. And yeah, fire it up. So I've completed the wiring now for the coils. There it is. And I figured out which one I need to wire to what. So that was the wiring I got from each one. So obviously because I'm on a V6 or 6-cylinder and it's 8 poles on the coil, I don't need to use the first spark output or input on the second coil. So that's how I've got it. And so I needed to figure out the firing order of what it goes. So on my particular engine it's 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6. And then basically the way you do that is you've got your spark A, B and C, so those 3 wires I've just wired in, and then you write your firing order down like this, so 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6, and then so the A is 1 and 5, and B is 4 and 3, and C is 2 and 6. That corresponds to the cylinder number, of course. And so I figured out online that on each coil you've got your 2 inputs, and they correspond to your 2 poles. So for example, on this one I believe your spark 1 or A goes to these 2, and your 2 or B goes to these 2. So to make it easy, I've obviously got A, B and C. So my A are these 2, B are these 2, and C are these 2, and these 2 are not used. So and then using this calculation here, so we've got A goes to 1 and 5, B to 3 and 4, C to 2 and 6. So now I just need to figure out which lead fits where and plugs into whatever one. The only is, I'll give you one warning, luckily it was on the one that I'm not using, but I plugged in an ignition lead just to double check it fit. Luckily it was a spare one I had, and it snapped off on here, so I tried getting it out, but it's loose, but it's on there. Like these ones like clip on, so that's why I needed to buy new leads. So just be aware of that. I'm going to try and put them once and then not take them off. There was a Bosch one as well, so I'm surprised at that. But anyway, just a word of warning. So now I've got to figure out which ignition lead goes where and just make sure I get the right ones. Okay, so that's all the plug leads on and everything. I need to drill out the holes for these to mount them on there, but I don't have a big enough drill at my house, so I'll grab that when I next get the unit. I've been told to count the number of teeth to where in relation to when there's none, the gap to the sensor. I believe it's 2, I think. Annoyingly, I was going to mount the sensor around there, I can't remember if I already said, but the things in the way. So I had to remove the TDC marks, but I know where they are because it sits just on top of that thing, you see there? So that's 0. And I've got the distributor as well, which shows some. But yeah, so I need to work that out now. So what I've done is set it to TDC. You see that mark there sort of lines up with that bolt-ish. Well, I know where it is. And then you've got to count the gaps from the sensor to tooth number 1, which is the first tooth after the gap to go past the sensor. So it's to the left of the gap, basically there. And mine is quite close. Normally they say about 6, but mine's 1. So, but that equates, each tooth is 10 degrees. So that easily enough equates to 10 degree number 1 tooth offset angle, something like that. So I'm going to try that and see what happens. So that's everything wired up. I've just reconfigured some stuff on the laptop. I'm not sure. I guess see if it starts. I'm sure I'm getting fuel. There it is. Out of gear. See what happens on here. No RPM trigger. Right, so as you saw, I was getting no RPM trigger on there. To be fair, I wasn't that happy with the way I'd mounted the VR sensor, so I've redone it there. It's a bit more beefy now. So there's a nice strong bracket coming off the block there, and then that's actually a door stop that you screw into the wall. So I flattened one end, put a hole in it, and then I've mounted it pointing the teeth like that rather than on top, because like I said, I messed up a little bit with the trigger wheel. I should have made it a bit bigger, but I've done it like that now. So let's see if it's going to work. I've disconnected the fuel pump for now, otherwise I'd just be flooding it. Alright, fingers crossed. There we go. So I've been trying it quite a lot and the battery is very flat, so. But that seemed to be, after the first sort of cycle, it was stable then, so I'll get the battery charged and try and add some fuel to the mix. Get my foot in there in case it needs a bit of gas. So as I kind of suspected, I did a spark test on the test mode on the Tuner Studio, and A and B was working. I could hear them ticking, but C wasn't. I did swap the coils over just to check, and it still wasn't working. So I just double checked my solders on the connector, and one of them had come loose. Annoyingly, even though I did check them, but I'm pretty confident they're on there now. I did check them with like a little screwdriver, gave them some force, and they didn't come undone. So let's do a test mode, and hopefully it should. We have lights. So go to the test mode, check the spark. You have to have the fuel pump on. I've got it disconnected so it doesn't just constantly run. So A. Sure if you can hear that. B. Now the moment of truth. Please see. Come on. Ooh, weird noise, but it is working. There must have been some fuel in there. Yeah. Ooh. Cool. They all seem to work. So hopefully it should actually start now. Here we go.